Hey guys, it's me, Travis, with Bet Karma. Before we get started on the March Madness Selection Show reaction show, show you guys real quick how to subscribe to all of our March Madness betting content. It's pretty simple. Just create a login, log in with your account, click either of these two orange buttons on the betkarma.com homepage. It'll take you to this page here. Click on CBB. It'll show you the March Madness Premium subscription with all of the things it includes, which is daily bets throughout the entire tournament. You get the futures bets, the high upside optimal brackets filled out by both of our experts. You get the March Madness chat room access as well as access to all of our premium articles. All you do is click select plan underneath that $39 a month option, and you get everything we have premium for March Madness for this 2021 season. Hope to see you guys there. So we have the March Madness Selection Show reaction show. We're ready to rock and roll with Bales and Dom of Bet Karma, our two leads of our college basketball betting division. We have the West bracket pulled up here. Bales, starting right off with you. If anybody is going to upset Gonzaga and make it out of this bracket, out of the section of the bracket anyway, who's it going to be and why?
No one. I think it's simple. I truly believe it's simple. I've said it literally the entire season. It's Gonzaga. They're winning the national championship. If I'm going with someone else coming out of this region, it has to be Iowa. I do find it a little weird that Iowa more or less they didn't get the 8 seed. Obviously, they got the 2, but they got the 8th overall ranking, which is why they're in Gonzaga's bracket. I do think that that's a little bit questionable. I believe they're better than that. With that being said, it's more or less, I actually was surprised at how easy I believe this bracket was made for Gonzaga. It feels like they're kind of pushing them through. Even with like the 4 seed Virginia, they have all their COVID questions. So it feels like they kind of want Gonzaga to go on a run here, in which I believe that this is a pretty easy Final Four for Gonzaga.
All right, Dom. So if Gonzaga doesn't make it out of this bracket, and I know that Bales, of course, went with the number 2 as the potential other opportunity, pushing aside the 1 and 2 seed in the West, if somebody 3 or lower makes it out, who do you think is going to be and why? Even if you're gung-ho on the Zags.
Yeah, so I'll get that out of the way. I am gung-ho on the Zags. I think they're going to win it all. But looking at this bracket, I don't think it's Iowa. I don't think Iowa makes it out of the first weekend. Their defense is awful. They're 3-point dependent, and their transition defense is just terrible. And you get in this tournament setting, especially with a 1 day to prepare, if they had to play like in Oregon in the second game, they're just going to get just ran out on defense. And I just don't think they can win, 4 games in a row to even get that far. So I don't think Iowa has a chance to get out of this bracket. I would say the biggest threats to Gonzaga in this bracket are Creighton or Oregon, actually. I think Oregon could go on a little run. I don't think VCU is very good. They kind of got beat up by the Bonnies today. They just kind of have fallen off. I mentioned Iowa. I don't think they're strong on defense. So I think Oregon could make a little run. It looks like they could, run into USC. They made it that far, but I could see Oregon in the Elite 8. That'd be a tough game for Gonzaga. And I guess Creighton is a little concerning as a 5. Just glancing at all the 5s, I would say Creighton is definitely the strongest 5 seed. They got that leadership behind Zagorowski. They got firepower where when they're hot, they can just drain threes. They can score a lot. Their defense isn't very outstanding either, but that's an interesting one with Creighton if they get past the Gauchos there. In terms of like double-digit seeds, the only one that really catches my eye is kind of weak bracket for the double digits. But Ohio is an interesting one as a 13. Jason Preston is a stud, their point guard. They're talking about him being NBA caliber. Virginia is nothing to write home about. Virginia doesn't have good guard play, and they're going up against a team in Ohio that has excellent guard play coming out of the MAC. So that's kind of a mismatch. I wouldn't be shocked if I could see, Ohio going on a run if they were to get past Virginia and Creighton. I don't know. It's Gonzaga. I'm trying to come up with somebody, but it's Gonzaga.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next spot here. We got the East Quadrant pulled up. The first question, Dom, I'll stick with you on this one as well, is I know we're talking like can any double-digit seed or any non-top seed make it out of the bracket, but just in Sweet 16 alone, in this East, is there anybody that you're like, this team has the most likeliest chance of being the Cinderella Sweet 16 story?
I know the public is going to think Florida State. I don't think this is a very good Florida State team like they've had in years past. So if I'm looking at this one, I mean, we know Michigan's banged up with Livers. If Livers doesn't play, I don't think they're 1 seed caliber. We saw Alabama go on a run and win the SEC tournament. They're the 2 seed. They're the best team in this bracket, I think. But LSU is probably the one team I would say could. I mean, they're an 8 seed and they could easily go on a run to Sweet 16, maybe Elite 8. They're one of the best offensive teams in this bracket. If LSU decides to play some defense, then they could definitely go on a run.
So you have no faith in Michigan in this bracket, saying that Alabama's the favorite, and what you said about the other teams as well.
The problem with Michigan is, if you ask 5 people who their best player is, you're probably going to get 5 different answers. If you get the same answer twice, maybe it's Dickinson, their freshman 7'1" center. You just don't see a lot of teams in March Madness go on runs where their best player is a center, let alone a freshman center. Livers was that kind of glue guy that just put the whole team together. I mean, he could drive to the basket. He could hit a 3 when they need it. Without him, it kind of just dismantles that chemistry that team had. I think it's going to hurt them. I mean, Eli Brooks is probably their, 4th or 5th best player. And the 2 games that he was out, they really struggled without him. He's, one of their best defenders. So it's kind of, they're one of those teams where if you take away one piece, kind of everything else just topples down.
Gotcha. Bales, what are your thoughts on him saying that Alabama's the best team in this bracket? Quadrant.
Yeah, I think I agree. I would say Alabama, if they're not the best team, they're probably the best coach team of their philosophy of basketball, which gives them the best shot to win. I do think that it's
I just want to say something about Alabama. You just brought that up about Nate Oates. I mean, the way that Alabama's offense is this year, I've never seen anything like it. I'll have to post some of the shot charts from some of their games. They do not believe in a mid-range jumper. So they're like the money ball of college basketball. They looked at all the analytics and metrics and decided everyone on the team has a green light to shoot from 3. The second they get the ball, they just launch the 3, and that's why they're kind of streaky sometimes, but they can score in bunches. And if you're not shooting a 3, you better have 2 feet in the paint, and you're either dunking it or laying it up. They only believe in baskets beyond the arc or underneath the basket, which are the most efficient shots in the sport of basketball. So it's really, really unique how they go about their offensive game.
Yeah, that's basically it. I do think that Texas has a very real case to be the best team in this quadrant, just because they have the guard play, they have the bigs, they have literally everything that you need to make a deep run. I think they got kind of a bad pool in the fact that they're going to have to play Alabama before even before the Elite 8, but that's just kind of how it works sometimes. If I would say kind of a more ridiculous team, I guess is a way to say it, to get to the Final Four in this quadrant, because I do think that if one quadrant's going to have something weird, it's going to be this one, because it's just absolutely loaded. I do believe that BYU is extremely underrated. I more or less told Travis this when I said that we should take them to make Final Four in our betting picks that we did the draft the other night.
You're gonna go against Izzo?
Go against it. Oh, come on.
Izzo. Come on,
man.
Shouldn't
even be in there.
I talk about that. Why is Michigan State a play-in game though? Really? Like, that shocked me. I did not think they were going to be a play-in game.
To be 100% honest, I don't know. I truthfully couldn't even believe that Louisville didn't make it, like flat out make it at all. I thought that they were much more of a lock than someone like Syracuse, or even Wichita State. I mean, I'll go on forever about Wichita State not being in this tournament.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks. I think the Oregon State popping the bubble in Georgetown, those are 2 unexpected, automatic qualifier bids. You're right. That kind of messed up the bubble. You got teams that should have been in, missed it. You got teams like Michigan State going to the playing game. Wichita State and Drake. I mean, like you said, Drake, I guess their resume, they deserve it, but they don't. I mean, they're a shell of what they were before. So
I agree. For BYU, though, like when you look at what they've done this year, if you look at their losses, take away a loss away at Pepperdine by 3, which personally I don't even think that's a bad loss. It's not a great one, but they lost 3 times to Gonzaga, once to USC, and then they lost at home to Boise State, but also by 4. I mean, they don't have that many great wins. They have a few good ones, but at the same time, they just have a team that's built relatively well as long as they can get backed by Matt Harms. I mean, I feel like this is a team that if someone's going to go on a shocking run that's like a 5 or higher seed, I feel like BYU has the ability to do it.
Last question. Go ahead.
I just want to mention the coaches in this region are just, I mean, look at this region. You look at the coaches. You got guys like Jawan Howard. You got Patrick Ewing. You got Tom Izzo in there. You got Rick Pitino making his return with Iona. I mean, is this guy the GOAT? I mean, Pitino, just everywhere he goes, he wins championships. Goes to Iona, gets him to the tournament his first year. He went to Greece and he won championships with the Greek team. I mean, Pitino is just incredible. Say what you want about him, like characteristic-wise, but guy can coach. I mean, there's a lot of elite coaches in this. And then you got guys like, Shaka Smart that everyone's been doubting for years. And like Bales mentioned, like he's got Texas looking good. I think this might be the most loaded bracket in terms of just 5, 6, 7 teams that none of them would shock you if they made it. I didn't even mention Leonard Hamilton and Florida State. There's just a lot of teams here that could go on a run, I guess.
So that kind of leads me to my last question I have for the East before we get to the next one is, and then Dom, I guess either of you can answer this one. What is the lowest seed in this bracket that wins opening? I would say opening weekend, but I guess opening game. First round, lowest seed, who wins?
Honestly, for me, it feels like 8. I mean, I'm sure there's an upset or something, but it feels like the top 8 are more so loaded in terms of high-end talent versus this being like a Cinderella bracket. I mean, truthfully, like if Michigan State's playing well, they could come in and just easily knock off BYU. That's not out of the question whatsoever. So 11 there, but I think what we're saying more or less in terms of the talent is like there's legitimately 8 teams in this quadrant that could make the Final Four and you wouldn't be shocked versus like a 15 is going to run the table or something.
Yeah, I agree.
There, Dom?
I would go Michigan State. I think Michigan State might struggle with UCLA, but if they get past them, I think they could match up well at BYU. I mean, Michigan State's going to be a way more physical team, so maybe it comes down to how the game's being called. But yeah, I mean, it's Tom Izzo in March, so I mean, I could see 11 seed there making a little run, winning a couple games. But yeah, I mean, the favorites here are pretty loaded.
So I know that's a question that it's probably one of our most popular questions to answer because everybody's looking for that round one upset, especially from a betting standpoint. So before we go on to the next quadrant, just going back to the West, I meant to ask that question on the West side. First round games, you guys, same thing. What do you think is the lowest digit seed to win out of the West? First round.
Dom, you go ahead because I have a crazy one here.
I got a crazy one, and I like Kansas. I like Bill Self. I mean, I root for the Jayhawks, but I'm hearing that a key player on Kansas is going to be missing the tournament. It sounds like it's not McCormick, who had to miss a game and then basically led to them bowing out of the Big 12 tournament, but I'm hearing McCormick's back, but a key player on Kansas. I don't know who that is. If it's Marcus Garrett, then they don't have a point guard, and then they don't have their best defensive player. I mean, Eastern Washington is not outstanding this year, but they got several forwards that kind of run their offense. They shoot well. I mean, I could see Eastern Washington pulling the upset on when do they play? Saturday. Yeah, I could see that. Kansas goes down on Saturday morning.
That's actually the team that I was picking too, just because when you look at it, they offensively they can shoot really well. If you put them on the line, they're absolutely 100% going to make it. And then they have the Big Sky Player of the Year in Tanner Groves, and then I believe Tyler Robertson was also the Big Sky Sixth Man of the Year. So when you add in that Jacob Davidson now is coming off of the bench, in which he got demoted, but he is realistically a starter caliber for them. I mean, it's a pretty deep team to the point where like they have 7 guys that I would feel comfortable if any 5 of those 7 were on the floor. Obviously, you want like Groves out there, but I actually do think that they're a real dog in this one, and Kansas I'm assuming is going to be relatively popular.
I got another live dog, and I already mentioned Ohio, but now I'm looking at the matchup more with Virginia. Virginia plays the classic pack line defense. They're going to pack in the defense in the middle and the paint. You're not going to be able to score at the rim. So the easiest way to beat the pack line defense is you rain threes over it. Ohio's got 3 knockdown perimeter shooters. Jason Preston can shoot it. Vanderplas was just killing it in the MAC tournament, and he's hot. We got 3 knockdown perimeter shooters against Virginia. I mean, we saw it with San Francisco earlier in the year. They shoot a ton of threes, and when they get hot, they're good. And they beat Virginia. I mean, it's like you can take down Virginia by hitting a lot of threes in the tournament. So I can see Ohio doing it.
All right, flipping now over to the Midwest Quadrant. Starting off with the same questions. Bales, with you first. Anything jumping off the board here as somebody that can potentially upset Illinois as the number 1 seed? So I know we were talking before we started recording that, I was talking about Loyola Chicago, and they got stuck, versus Illinois in that second round. So I guess my first question for you, Bales, is Illinois easily making the 4 as a similar mindset and response you had to Gonzaga, or is it this more of the other bracket where, there's, 8 teams that wouldn't be shocked to make that Final Four? What, overall view here from this side?
Unfortunately, I kind of tweeted this out right before we got on, but this bracket's going to be pretty chalky because you're just going to have people throw in the Zags. That's obvious. They're going to throw in Baylor. It's obvious. And finally, they're going to throw in Illinois. It is obvious.
You don't think people are going to jump on the Cade Cunningham train with Oklahoma State as the 4 seed? Underseeded.
I do think some will. I just after seeing what Illinois has been doing, I find it less likely, I guess, that people are going to jump that way. I do think that there's going to be a decent amount that follow Oklahoma State, and I think it's reasonable. I just also don't believe that they really have the team that's going to beat Illinois.
All right, then, Dom, so if Illinois is not representing the Midwest when the Final Four is all said and done, who is it going to be? Are you still on that Oklahoma State, or do you think it's someone else?
Yeah, Houston's really good. It's they're going to be matchup dependent. Houston's a little actually undersized down low, but they are excellent rebounding team. Definitely defensive minded. So that'll be interesting with Houston, their path. Illinois, I mean, I think Illinois is the second best team in the country behind Gonzaga. But if it's not Illinois, I do think Oklahoma State could go on a run. I mean, Cade Cunningham is the most electric player in the country. He's the best freshman in the country. He's going to go number 1 in the NBA draft in a few months. Yeah, he could carry that team. And it's not just Cade. Their team is actually really good, and they showed that taking down Baylor. Just the past 3-4 weeks, they've actually looked a lot better. So I could definitely see Oklahoma State. Their matchup is interesting with Liberty, another pack line defensive team. So they're going to make it tough to score in the paint. So Oklahoma State is sometimes like on and off from 3. So they're going to have to knock down some perimeter shots to open that up. But if they get beyond Liberty, Oklahoma State would probably be playing Tennessee, who is not that impressive. Beginning of the year, I was all about Tennessee, but I don't buy in anymore. So I think Oklahoma State would have a relatively easy path to meeting up with Illinois in the Sweet 16.
So you were saying some, I guess not really negative comments about Houston, but they said they're undersized, under the basket and stuff like that. So I guess I had one question for Houston, for you, Dom, is do you even see them getting to the Elite Eight to verse a Oklahoma State or an Illinois, or do you think that because of what you said about them that they probably won't even make it that far? What are your thoughts on that?
I think they're going to handle Cleveland State with ease, and that's one that I'd be willing to lay the chalk. I could see Houston winning by 30 there. They're just Cleveland State, good team, but they're just going to be outclassed here. Clemson Rutgers as the 7-10. I don't like either team. I again think Houston could just run them out of the gym. So then you kind of pencil in Houston to the Sweet 16, which what do we have here? West Virginia, Morehead State, San Diego State, Syracuse. Again, I don't see any elite team there. I mean, Aztecs are good. West Virginia, when they're good, they're really good. But recently, it's been more kind of bad when they need to be good. I don't know. Houston's going to be in the Elite Eight, and whether they play Illinois or Oklahoma State, that'll depend. That'll determine who's going to the Final Four.
All right, and then Bales, who's the lowest seed? Or not? Sorry, What is the lowest seed to win in the first round out of this side?
Realistically, I think Syracuse honestly could potentially get it done. I do think that they got a pretty bad draw against San Diego State. I'll say they got a good draw that they're not playing a playing game, but San Diego State's not a good matchup for them. With that being said, we saw Buddy Boeheim just kind of completely take over in the ACC tournament, and I feel like he has the potential to really do that again. The big problem is San Diego State obviously has shooters and has at least reasonable offensive rebounding, which is how you beat their defense. If I would say the lowest seed that I truly believe wins, I would probably put at Syracuse, just because Cleveland State obviously isn't getting it done. Drexel, no. Oregon State, I don't actually like them very much. I think that Tennessee's going to handle that pretty easily. And then I do like Liberty quite a bit. It's just I'm not going to bet against that Oklahoma State team right now.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to think about Syracuse. I think they were an 11 seed when they had that play-in game and went on a run and took down Michigan State when Michigan State just froze against the zone. And State was one of like the overwhelming favorites to even win that year. Yeah, I mean, Syracuse, they're right where they want to be, right? They just sneak in on the bubble, sneak into the tournament, 10 or 11 seed, and then just start beating teams. It feels like this happens every year.
All right, so you're both saying that the 11 Syracuse, if let me see, I'm looking at the bracket real quick myself again. I thought there was somebody else that we were. No, that was in the other quadrant. So Syracuse 11 seed. They're both saying that is the lowest seed to win the first round. Is what they're guessing here. I'm going to pull up the last quadrant here for you guys. The south side, we got Baylor's number 1 seed with Ohio State as number 2. Bales, starting with you here. How heavy are you on Baylor making it to the Final Four? And if not at all, who is the representative from the south?
Yeah, I think I'll say I believe that Baylor. Obviously, it's real easy to come on here and be like, oh, no, I think that the 1 seed makes it. Obviously, they're the 1 seed. I do believe that there's 3 teams that can make Final Four in this, though, which is Baylor, Ohio State, and Arkansas. I'm not generally a guy that like goes out on these ridiculous limbs like Loyola. When they had that Final Four run, you just weren't going to find that type of thing in my brackets. I do believe that the lowest seed that can make the Final Four is going to be Arkansas. It's just after watching what they did with LSU, man, I'm losing confidence in them by the day. I do think that they have the team to potentially do it, though. Outside of Moody, they're a relatively older team. I guess they have juniors, plenty of seniors that are going to play the majority of their minutes. So I do think that Arkansas is fine, but it feels like Baylor is kind of relatively much higher than the other teams, even though I do like Ohio State and Arkansas quite a bit.
What about your North Carolina Tar Heels, man? You think Baylor's just going to steamroll past UNC?
I actually think that UNC has a unique shot against them because of their offensive rebounding. But I mean, I've been low
size, right?
What?
And UNC's size against Baylor kind of undersized.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
a
nice.
Pretty big mismatch.
The problem is, I guess, yeah, I think UNC can beat them if their shot's not falling. But imagine how out of control this game's going to get if Baylor's hitting their threes like they normally do, because there's a 0% chance UNC can match that.
Yeah, North Carolina's 3-point shooting is just atrocious. And it's like if they were decent, then they'd be a legitimate threat to make a real deep run. But yeah, it's tough to watch sometimes. But I mean, like the one knock on Baylor, well, I guess I got 2 knocks on Baylor. They looked truly elite before their COVID pause. I heard 8 guys on that team got COVID, and some of them actually got like pretty ill. And so, you know, they're feeling the symptoms. They got sick. They have not looked like the same Baylor team since they came back. Their defense has fallen outside of the top 20 on KenPom. Their defense has just not looked the same. So I think, for one, they kind of took a step back on that, you know, elite offensive and defensive on both sides of the ball. And then the only other knock you can say about Baylor is they're undersized. I mean, they are starting a 6'8" center. I mean, they're starting Vitale at power forward at 6'5". They just got a bunch of 6'4", 6'5" guys out there. UNC is huge. what do they have? 4 7-footers, 6'10" to 7 foot.
Yeah.
I mean, they can just run those guys out there. If they can get easy points in transition, and I'm kind of brushing past Wisconsin here just because Wisconsin has not looked good lately. So assuming North Carolina can beat Wisconsin, I think North Carolina could give Baylor a really tough time. Beyond that, I mean, you talked about Ohio State. You're just brushing past Oral Roberts and the leading scorer in the country, Max Admis, on Oral Roberts. I mean, that kid can get buckets. Nobody's giving him the attention. Maybe over the next few days, people will start giving him some highlight reels. But no, I do think Ohio State can get past them. Florida hasn't looked really good lately. Neither has Vatek. So I could see Ohio State kind of getting a couple easy wins there. I agree with Bales. I like Arkansas. They can really score. Their defense kind of worries me, but they can score. They got a great coach in Musselman. That game, by the way, Arkansas Colgate can score. They can hit threes and they can make their shots. Whatever that over is, sign me up. I'll take the over there. Let's just get points. I mean, both teams should be in the 80s there. Looking through the rest of it, Texas Tech, that's just a team I wanted to be elite all season long and just never really got there. Purdue should have an easy win, I think, against North Texas, honestly. North Texas kind of wants to just grind it out, and I think Purdue's going to outscore them. Villanova is a shell of itself of what they were before. I mean, they lost Gillespie. I mean, that is just your senior leader, your point guard goes down. And then their fill-in point guard goes down. I don't know if he's going to be back, if Moore's going to be back for the tournament, but that's a tough one. They have to go up against Winthrop, where, Winthrop, their point guard is 6'7" Chandler Vaudrin. He's a matchup nightmare for anybody, let alone somebody trying to fill in their third string, point guard on Villanova. So that'll be a tough matchup.
That's going to be every year there's the 12 upset over the 5 that everyone loves picking. It's Winthrop this year. That's who everyone's going to go.
Yeah, I could see it.
So that being said, I guess that more or less answers the last question for this bracket side is Winthrop the lowest seed that you see has a potential chance to win their first round game? The 12 seed there? Or
For me,
there's going to be something lower than that?
I think North Texas is going to be a live dog. I don't really have any issues with North Texas over Purdue. I don't. Yeah. No, I don't. They obviously don't have the firepower to keep up with them. I believe if they can just, grind it out, and their defense is playing extremely well, I believe that they can more or less take Hamlet and squeak out, like the really small win. Whereas I do think that Winthrop, has the chance to come out and actually look good in the win, instead of kind of that grind it out, super slow, and you kind of just utilize your defense and then luck yourself into a couple late shots type of thing.
Or Texas just beat Western Kentucky, right?
Yeah, in overtime.
Yeah. So I mean they handled Charles Bassey, who's an elite center on Western Kentucky. Charles Bassey is NBA caliber. He's awesome. So they handled their size, just grinding it to a halt, and then they took care of him. They can handle Purdue's size, take care of Travion Williams and Edey.
The Williams is just going to be the main issue. I mean, they're really good. They don't give up that many offensive rebounds, North Texas, that is. And the big thing that they do is they create just a ridiculous amount of turnovers. So for Purdue, that doesn't turn the ball over a ton, but also isn't just like absurdly good at protection. I do think that it's reasonable that North Texas can kind of squeak one out. If you're making like one bracket, I don't think that you should go all in on that or anything, but I do think that that's probably the lowest seed that I would pick to advance here.
All right, so now that we've gone through all 4 quadrants, the last part, we're just going to do 2 or 3 more quick questions as a complete bracket observation. Both of these guys clearly have just said earlier that it's Zags with very hard emphasis on that. The gap between them and everyone else. This is something they've said in the chat room all season long is so vast. But that aside, overall, what is the lowest seed that wins the national championship?
Well, I don't think any lowest seed is going to win the national championship. So I mean, maybe we talk about lowest seed to like get to the Final Four or something. I've been thinking leading up to this, and then now seeing the bracket, I agree with what I've been thinking. I think we're going to see some wild upsets on Friday and Saturday, and it's going to be March Madness, and it's just going to be crazy what we're used to experiencing it. I think the second weekend and third weekend is just going to be pretty chalky. I mean, the top tier teams have really separated themselves. There's just not as many elite teams this year. You got teams that we're used to seeing in March with top caliber talents pulling it together, making a run. Teams like Duke, teams like Kentucky, they're not there. Louisville is not there. There's a lot of like the blue bloods that aren't here. And then the middle teams are pretty mediocre. So I think after we get past the first, 48 hours of pure mayhem.
Well, I mean, it could still be like, in theory, like a 2 or 3 seed. I just mean in general. Are we saying that it is, without shadow of a doubt, a 1 seed is going to be winning the national championship? Or do we think
Zags, baby.
Or do we think that there's an opportunity for, 2, 3, 4, no matter even if it just the lowest in general, unless you're saying a 1 seed without even need to explain for a 2 or 3 is going to be winning the national championship?
All right, Travis, I'll throw 2 teams out here. I'll give you a 7 seed and a 4 seed. 4 seed, Oklahoma State, Cade Cunningham. I mentioned that they could go on a run. They have that ability. 7 seed, I mean, we've seen UConn do it. Kemba Walker, Shabazz Napier, right? Why not James Bouknight? Like, let's go. 7 seed UConn, go on a run behind James Bouknight.
All right, Bale, same thing for you.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably a 3. I think Texas is probably the lowest seed that I would think. I guess I will say that Oklahoma State is live. I think the issue is they're going to have to run a pretty hard table where they need to beat likely Illinois, then Houston, then Baylor, then the Zags. And even if we say like Baylor doesn't get there, it's going to be Ohio State or maybe Arkansas. So I do think that it might be a little too difficult for a team like Oklahoma State to really run the table there. But I think that Texas is a reasonable option outside of, like the Gonzagas that we basically are all just chomping at the bit to fill in our brackets. They're going to be like 80% of brackets are just going to be the Zags.
Do we think that in like, let's say like the last 10, maybe even 15 years of March Madness, that the Zags have the biggest, either from a betting side or just skill side or matchup side or whatever, just the biggest advantage to win it all, to run the tables for a number one overall seed compared to, let's just say like the last 10 years? Like, do we feel like that is the case here? Like they're the UConn women of 2021?
I would say I wouldn't put them with the UConn of women. I think that the Zags have a chance to lose the women of UConn. Just they were obviously not going to lose ever. But when you just look at something like, if anyone uses KenPom, usually the number 1 team and the number 2 team are the difference in their adjusted efficiency is about 3 points. Sometimes it's even less. The Zags at number 1 are 6 points ahead of the number 2 team. So yeah, it's pretty close to the Zags, just obviously having the type of team that they need to win it all. Then they can get it done literally anyway. They have older guys that aren't going to panic. They have the electric freshmen that literally everyone loves. I mean, for me, I think that Gonzaga is just significantly more talented. They didn't have a really difficult run at the table in their conference tournament or anything. I feel like they're just more or less by far the best team in college basketball this year.
Yeah, I agree. I would say in the last 20 years in this sport, it goes 2009 North Carolina and then 2021 Gonzaga. I honestly think they're the second best team I've seen in 20 years. And they're the highest rated team on KenPom ever.
Yeah.
So,
and I think by a very wide margin, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're the only team to ever receive, they're at a 36 right now, I think. Let me switch over and see. 38 is their adjusted efficiency. I think the highest ever before that was like a 35 or 36. So it's not even close. The metrics think that Gonzaga is the best team in the last 20 years by far. I think that 09 UNC team was unbelievable. that 2016 Villanova team, they beat everybody by double digits in
Was the 09
tournament, I
UNC?
believe.
Was that Tyler?
That was
It was
Ty Lawson.
Hansborough, Ty Lawson, Danny Green,
Yeah,
Ellington was
okay.
on it, I believe.
Ellington. Yep. Yeah, that team was loaded. I mean, that was just cream of the crop.
So yeah, that's it. That wraps up our March Madness selection show, reaction show. Appreciate Bales and Dom hopping in here and giving us their 2 cents on each of the quadrants and everything. If you have any more questions, that is why we have a Discord channel. Hop in. All you have to do is go to betkarmachat.com, get into our college basketball betting March Madness channel, ask questions there, and then as you saw at the very beginning of the video, sign up for our March Madness expert bets, which includes things beyond bets like fully filled out brackets with high upside and optimal and everything under the sun that you guys need to win your work leagues or your bets, whatever it may be. If you're doing something with March Madness, these guys are here to help. So make sure you guys, if you enjoyed this, click the like on the video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet, and we'll see you guys inside of our chat room.